Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a seriously exciting journey, learning Vietnamese from zero to hero. Now, I know for a lot of people, Vietnamese seems incredibly daunting, right? It's got unfamiliar tones, totally new vocabulary, and grammar structures that feel completely alien. But what if I told you that the secret to mastering this language isn't just buried in flashcards and endless textbook drills? It's actually much deeper, way more effective, and honestly, a whole lot more fun. So think about this for a second. Can you truly learn a language without learning its culture? We so often treat languages like math equations. You know, just swap an English word for a Vietnamese word, plug in a formula, and boom, you're speaking. But in this explainer, we're going to see exactly why that rigid approach usually falls flat. We'll discover why grammar and vocabulary are really only half the battle when it comes to truly connecting with the Vietnamese people. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to demystify the whole learning process by breaking it down into four distinct pillars. First, the language-culture connection. Second, essential Vietnamese grammar. Third, mastering everyday conversation. And finally, finding centers and testing. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the language-culture connection, more than just words. It's incredibly easy to think of a new language as just a list of arbitrary rules you've got to memorize. But in Vietnamese, the language is a direct living expression of the culture itself. To put that into perspective, take a look at the massive jump in proficiency scores from a study conducted at Thai Nguyen University. Back in 2020, using standard teaching methods, about 77.2% of their international students hit a B2 level of proficiency or higher. That's a pretty solid baseline. But then look at 2021. They fundamentally changed their curriculum to integrate deep cultural experiences, and that success rate absolutely skyrocketed to 91.1%. The number of students failing to meet the standard literally dropped by more than half. That is massive statistical proof that cultural integration is an absolute game changer for fluency. So what exactly did they do differently to get those numbers? Well, they introduced these really specific, fun micro-experiences. Instead of just reading about the Tet holiday in some dry textbook, foreign students were actually in the kitchen making traditional bánh chưng. They were out there participating in folk games, singing traditional folk songs, and actually celebrating New Year's Eve with locals in their homes. These weren't just fun little field trips, they were powerful learning mechanisms. By experiencing the culture firsthand, the students contextualized the vocabulary. They built actual emotional connections to the words they were learning, which is what drove those high test scores and proved that true cultural immersion works so much faster than rote memorization. Moving right along to Section 2, Essential Vietnamese Grammar, Building the Framework. For native English speakers, jumping into Vietnamese grammar can honestly feel a bit like navigating a maze blindfolded. That's why having the right resource is absolutely critical. Bing Ngo's Vietnamese and Essential Grammar is a total lifesaver here. The author actually directs the Vietnamese language program at Harvard, and he designed this book specifically to bridge the gap for English speakers. It zeroes in on the exact grammatical hurdles that cause problems for us, making it a highly effective tool to keep you from pulling your hair out in frustration. And one of the biggest hurdles this book helps you overcome is a concept linguists call negative transfer. Basically, negative transfer is the influence that your existing knowledge of English has on the way you try to use Vietnamese. Because our brains are completely wired for English syntax, we naturally try to just nap English rules directly onto Vietnamese sentences. And you know what? That is the root cause of so many common errors for beginners. You simply cannot just translate word for word. You really have to rewire how you think about sentence construction from the ground up. Let's look at a super basic greeting to see exactly what that rewiring looks like in practice. In English, our greetings are almost entirely time-based, right? Good morning, good evening. If you try to translate good morning literally into Vietnamese, saying chào buổi sáng, it actually sounds pretty unnatural to a native speaker. Instead, Vietnamese greetings are based on action and culturally defined pronouns. You say chào plus a pronoun that reflects the age, gender, and status of the person you're speaking to. So you might use ein for an older brother figure or chi for an older sister figure. The grammar rule itself is anchored in the cultural value of respect, not just the position of the sun in the sky. Okay, let's shift gears to Section 3, Mastering Everyday Conversation, from Theory to Practice. To actually make that jump from textbook theory to speaking out in the real world, you need a solid guide, like the Vietnamese as a Second Language, or VSL-1 textbook. This gem was developed by the University of Social Sciences and Humanities down in Ho Chi Minh City. And what makes this resource so incredibly effective is its laser focus on practical pronunciation and everyday topics. Over the course of about 150 class hours, it introduces around 500 vital vocabulary words. It's perfectly engineered not to make you some academic poet, but to make your speaking feel completely natural and understandable to the locals you're going to interact with every single day. Here's how that conversational progression actually plays out. The path from absolute beginner at the A1 level to real-world survival skills at the A2 level is super actionable. Step 1. You learn the basics, like introducing yourself and stating your nationality. Step 2, you're asking for directions and confidently discussing your housing situation. And by step 3, you are out there navigating the busy markets for shopping, handling the somewhat chaotic traffic, and using local services. It really breaks the daunting task of fluency down into highly achievable practical milestones. And finally, we arrive at section 4, finding centers and testing, taking the next step. If you find yourself in Ho Chi Minh City, which, is still wildly called Saigon, you are totally in luck. There are some fantastic, highly reputable language centers ready to guide you. First up, you have 123 Vietnamese, which is super well known for its focus on practical communication. Then there's the Saigon Language School and New Sky, both offering incredibly flexible, structured learning paths. And hey, if you want a really deep, rigorous academic environment, the USH Center at Vietnam National University is pretty much the absolute gold standard for international students and researchers. Now, when you're finally ready to make it all official and prove your skills, you'll be taking the NLTV Standard Proficiency Test. This test is fully aligned with a common European framework of reference, so it carries real weight. It's a comprehensive 3 to 4 hour exam broken down into 4 distinct sections. You're going to face a 55-question listening test, 40 questions for reading, a 60-minute writing section, and to top it off, a 15-minute speaking interview that involves role-playing and discussion. Honestly, just knowing exactly what the test looks like takes a lot of the fear out of certification, giving you a really clear, structured target to aim for. So, we've covered the crucial link between culture and language, the tools you need to build your grammar framework, the exact steps to everyday conversation, and the best places to get certified. The incredibly rich, welcoming culture of Vietnam is literally just waiting for you to dive in. The only question left to answer is, when do you start? If you're looking for the absolute perfect launchpad, I highly recommend checking out the Vietnamese course for foreigners at Bien Hoa English Center, taught by Mr. Tran. It's a fantastic place to begin. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did, and I'll catch you next time.